Welcome to The Way the World Works, where the trusted team behind the Tuttle Twins books tackles current events, hot topics, and fun ideas to help your family find clarity in a world full of confusion.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Brittany.
So today I want to talk about comparing ourselves to other people. And this
Mm,
kind of has like two parts to it because at first when I started writing this, I thought of the quote, comparison is the thief of joy. Have you heard this quote?
mm-hmm. Yes.
And I thought of that. And so at first I'm like, okay, well, obviously the answer is it's not good to compare ourselves to other people. And that I think is a general rule, but we're going to get into some nuances, as they say, about that in a minute. But
Mm-hmm.
this is a pretty popular quote. I don't know who said it or who originated it. It's one of those things like your parents say to you and their parents said to them, and I have no idea where it came from. That could be a whole other
Mm-hmm.
episode. But what it basically means is when you spend all your time comparing yourself to someone else, you're robbing yourself of happiness, of joy, because you're sitting there just obsessing over what somebody else is, and they really have nothing to do with you, right? So I wanted to kind of get into this and see and talk about competition and if it's good or bad now, or not competition, comparison. Oops, wrong words. So I don't know about you, Katie. I have definitely compared myself to other people before.
Yeah, I think it's so ingrained in us. I don't even know if it's possible to not.
No,
I think you have to be
exactly.
super mindful if you're trying not to.
Exactly, and I know, like, growing up with siblings, like, it just kinda happens naturally, right? Like, that's
Yes.
something I think we grew up doing. As a performer, I've done a lot of different performing. It's really hard because you wanna be the best, even though it's not. There are a lot of things in life that aren't a competition. I'm a competitive person, I will make a competition out of anything, and that's something
Uh,
I have to work on.
I am the same way. My family, I hate playing games as a family. No one wants to play with me because I'm super competitive. We were like, well, let's do puzzles because that's not competitive. And I'm like racing to put the pieces in
You're like,
before the
"I'll
other
find
person.
a
I'm like,
way."
I am the worst person. No wonder no one wants to play with me. I'm awful.
It's hard, and it's because it comes back to the whole comparison thing, right? And I know, like, when
Mhm.
I watch people who do the same things as I, even as a writer, I'm comparing myself like, "Oh, wait, did they write that better than me?" You know,
Mhm.
why are they better than what are they doing differently? And I will say for firsthand that I have wasted a lot of time that I could have been probably having joy just obsessing over why I'm different or why I'm not as good as somebody else. Now, is this always bad? Like the way I'm portraying it now, yes, I would say it is, right? That's not good. And in fact, Jordan Peterson, who we've talked about before, there's a 12 Rules boot camp Tuttle Twins book, which I love, which is based off his book, 12 Rules for Life. But the first thing I see when I wake up is a quote from Jordan Peterson I have on my wall that says, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who
Mhm.
someone else is today.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. That's like the
isn't that great?
basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the 1% or the basis for Atomic Habits. It's the same, like, really your
Yes.
only competition is who you were yesterday.
Yes, which kinda brings me to the next thing, like, so we say, is it good to compare ourselves to other people? Probably not, right? Especially if it becomes something that becomes obsessive, but what about comparing ourselves to different versions of ourself? And to me, that is one of the most important things we can do to really better ourselves. And Katie, I'm gonna put you on the spot so you can turn this down, but
Mm.
can you think of a time that you were really, not just like all of a sudden like, "Oh, I'm comparing myself," but you were really cognizant, as they say, to looking at how you were yesterday and being like, "Today I wanna be better than I was today." You mentioned you read Atomic Habits, so I thought maybe you've had something that you'd kinda worked on or consciously compared yourself.
So I don't know if this goes under comparison, but it is something I learned in Atomic Habits, and it's this idea that you tell yourself, you decide what the best version of yourself looks like, and then when you're faced with a decision, you say, "Well, the person that I am or that I want to be would decide this in this situation." And it somehow, I don't know if that's really comparison, but it is something from Atomic Habits where it's like, and maybe it does require that you compare yourself a little bit because you're saying, well, I'm recognizing that the version of me that I think could use some work is likely to respond to this situation in this way. But the version of me that I would prefer to be would likely respond to this in a different way, and then choosing to make the decision. Like, it's kind of like the fake it till you make it, I guess. It's like,
Mhm.
this is the person I want to be, and so the person I want to be would react this way. And even though that's not my instinct, I think that I should go ahead and choose to react that way instead, because it's in line with becoming the version of myself that I want to be.
No, and I think that actually goes along with this perfectly because at the end of the day, it's comparing, right? It's comparing like,
Mhm.
okay, this is the person. It's almost like comparing yourself with another person to another person without comparing yourself to another person. You're comparing
Right.
yourself to a future person you'd like to be. And you're saying,
Exactly.
okay, this is what this person would do. This is where I am now. Like, what can I do to be? And Atomic Habits would say this, 1% closer to that person
And I
tomorrow, and then 1% closer the next day.
Yeah, and I think, we live in such a time of mixed messages or over information. I think that all the time. I cannot imagine being a young person right now with just information overload. And we talk about how it's great that we have access to so much information, but there's just these, you know, different ideas about everything in your face all the time. And so one of the things that I think that young people especially are told all the time is like, you're perfect exactly the way you are. Like,
Hmm.
just embrace yourself like you're perfect the way you are. And that's, I don't think, true. First of all, I think that we're here, whether you believe in religion or whatever else you kind of guides your life. I think that the idea is there in most belief systems that we should really be striving to identify the places where we need to improve and then working towards improving ourselves in that way. And so I think that that idea that, like, oh no, you don't need to be introspective. You don't need to look in the mirror and see, any place that there's any room to change anything. You should be happy just exactly the way you are. I mean, I guess you could be happy the way that you are, but you should certainly be able to reflect and to look at yourself in, I say critical, not in a negative way, but thinking critically of yourself and being able to say, like, oh, I don't actually feel like I'm my best version of myself. And this is something that I do that keeps me from being able to be happier or being able to be healthier. Like, in that way, comparing ourselves to, maybe another person motivates you, and you're not viewing them as, oh my gosh, I'm the worst because I could never be like them. But you say, like, oh, that person overcame something similar to what I'm going through. And so maybe I can learn something from the way that they took control of that situation and crafted a better life for themselves. So I think that, comparison to ourselves is pretty important if we ever want to progress beyond where we are today.
No, exactly. And that's one area where we'd say comparison is great. And then there's another one building on that. So we talked about not comparing ourselves to other people when it comes to like, especially things like, oh, she's prettier than me, she's skinnier than me, things like that. Like that's just a waste of time. But what about when it comes to something like a sport? And I think this can go both ways
Hmm.
too. If you're watching somebody and you're like, they're better than me, you could dwell in it, right? It could become something where it becomes bad, or you could use that to make yourself better, right? So it's such a fine line, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Is it's not always good, but it's not always bad, which I actually think is a lot of things in life are
Yes.
not black and white.
Well, if you're looking at it like, are you looking at a person and comparing yourself to them through a lens of envy or through like inspiration? And I think
That's
that's
a
what kind of
really good
defines
point.
it. So do you envy this person's talent or beauty or whatever it is? Or do you find them inspiring and you can look at them and say, you know what? I can adopt some of the things that they do to achieve their whatever it is that you're admiring. Like, there's two different ways to look at it. And if it's envy, it's wrong. Like, it robs you of joy. It's very selfish. It's not healthy. But if you're choosing to look at someone as an inspiration, my gosh, there's so much joy to be had there. So I think it's really the lens through which you're viewing it.
And I didn't have in my notes to talk about that, and I think that's such a good point because where is the difference? And I think that is the difference. That is the way to say like, oh yeah, this is not the right way, and it's the envy thing or admiration or inspiration. I think is a better way to put it because I know that again as a performer, watching great performers are what makes me want to be better. Right, it makes
Hmm.
me want to take notes and say how are they able to do what they're doing. Writers too,
Hmm.
reading a really good author makes me want to sit down and write because I'm so inspired, or I'm like, oh, I want to write like that. I was just thinking that this morning. What was I watching? I think I was reading Great Gatsby or something. And I was like, oh, that was such a cool way the F. Scott Fitzgerald, wrote. I want to go and write that way. And so it wasn't this like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, why am I not as good as him? It was, oh, I want to take this and I want to do it better. But again, I think it's important not to fall into the traps, because I think it is so easy to go down a spiral when you're thinking about like, why am I not, especially not even, so I said like using somebody as a writer to want to make me a better writer, but then I think you can fall into a trap in a different way, where sometimes I found myself when I was writing and getting published a lot, where I was like, why is that person getting published more than me? Why is
And
this
that's
person?
envy.
And that was envy. Exactly. Because I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it where it was like, how can I be a better writer tomorrow? It was, why does this person have this and I don't?
Right.
And
Which is
that's a dangerous thing.
yeah. And I think if you choose, I mean, this is so applicable just across life in general, like, envying someone, what someone has, or their accomplishments, or what you view as like a break that they got that you didn't, it just makes you miserable. And if you choose instead to view things as inspirational or as joyful, you're going to be inspirational to other people. You're going to have joy. Like, you very much are in control of the way that you see the world and the way that you respond to the world that you're seeing. And so it really is a practice in being disciplined, because we're all going to see people that we think are better than us at different things. We're always going to see people that we think are more attractive than us or more talented than us. But those people look at people and think that they're more attractive or talented than them too. Like, no one is immune to this comparison. And so I think it's, it can serve to make us better at the things that we care about. And if we choose to let it, it can serve to make us bitter and miserable, and also miserable for other people to be around us because we're not happy.
No, exactly. I think that's great. And be mindful in your own lives of when you're doing this, and maybe notice when it's bad and when it's good, and try to see if you're feeling envy or you're feeling inspired. I think that's a great way to look at it. And we will leave it there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. And until next time, we will talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to The Way the World Works. Make sure your family is subscribed and check out TuttleTwins.com for more awesome content.